Johnson-Thompson, Vice President of Education for the Helen Keller Foundation for Research and Education, and I am your MC for tonight. It is with great delight, honor, and enthusiasm that I welcome you to the 2023 Helen Keller Prize for Vision Research. In 1940, my Aunt Helen authored the book, Let Us Have Faith, to uplift the world in the midst of a historic world war. And the faith she advocated went beyond religion to faith in ourselves, faith in each other, and faith in our institutions. This evening, I have the privilege of introducing to you a man that I not only have the utmost honor and respect for, but one who embodies that faith that Helen Keller alluded upon when she wrote, "For faith is thought directed toward good, and like all thought power, it is infinite." Please help me welcome to the stage President of the Helen Keller Foundation for Vision Research, Dr. Robert Morris.
Yeah, thank you, Keller, and thank you, Laura Beckwith, for arranging this evening. The Helen Keller Foundation is the only Helen Keller-named organization founded by the Keller family. The Helen Keller Foundation and our outstanding partnering sponsor, the Bright Focus Foundation, welcome you to a celebration of some of the greatest vision research in the world has to offer. Awards are important because they're public expressions of our aspirations, and they inspire new researchers and supporters. So we're very grateful to the Prize Selection Committee for the outstanding laureates they've picked over the 29 years of the Helen Keller Prize. Thank you very much, and have a good time tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Morris. When Helen Keller was asked, "What do you consider a teacher to be?" she responded, "One who breathes life into knowledge so that it takes a new form in progress and in civilization." The Bright Focus Foundation not only supports tremendous efforts to bring new knowledge to our daily lives, but it does so in a manner Helen Keller would applaud. The Helen Keller Foundation is thrilled to be a partner with the Bright Focus Foundation as we strive to prevent blindness. Please make welcome the president of the Bright Focus Foundation, Stacy Pagos Haller.
Thank you, Keller. I have to acknowledge how proud we are to be partnered with the Helen Keller Foundation and her tradition. And I want to express a special thanks to Laura, because this setting is simply magnificent. I almost think it's better than the Smithsonian, if you all have been in the Air and Space, because it really gives you a sense of all of the planes and all of the science, engineering, and design that went into helping Americans fight in World War II. May we never have another World War. Bright Focus is a foundation that funds research worldwide to end diseases of mind and sight. And in that journey of funding early stage research and promising ideas, we also want to build the bridge with the science community so that we can help advocate for more federal funding for eye research. And bottom line, we want to do everything we can as a charity to help you end the diseases that keep us from aging well. And with that, I hope you have a beautiful night, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Stacy. The Helen Keller Prize Selection Committee includes its scientists and research physicians who are leaders in the international research community. We are so appreciative of their diligent work and commitment. Please welcome to the stage the co-chairman of this committee, Dr. Nicholas Delamere. Sorry, Delaware. Sorry, Dr. Delamere. And Dr. Joe Hollyfield.
Keller, thank you. I've been called a lot worse in my time. So good evening to everybody. I would like to just extend a special welcome to our past Helen Keller laureates, and I think we have a few in our room. I think Emily Chu is here, Dean Bach is here, and I think Gerrit Mellis is here too. So if you can stand, and recognize these wonderful scientists, past award winners. Thank you very much.
The Helen Keller laureates are selected by a very distinguished committee of scientists that are involved in every step of the deliberation and the selection process. Their names are on the back of the program. You can see those there, but I would ask that all of the members of the prize selection committee to stand. I see Terry right here in the front. Please stand, those of you that...
I suppose that most of us in our lives have needed hope at one time or another. But how many of us have given hope? From 1943 to 1946, Helen Keller desperately wanted to get involved as a war volunteer. But what was a deaf-blind woman going to do to further the war effort, to help? Her calling came as she was asked to visit military hospitals in which soldiers not only fought for their country, but also fought for their lives. Many blinded, missing limbs, or paralyzed altogether, away from their loved ones, trying to see just a glimpse of hope in the darkness. Helen wrote, "A drop of sweetness stole in my grief over the war-stricken as they tried to put their wasted arms around me, not always successfully, but their wish was a benediction I shall treasure forever." Aunt Helen called this time the crowning experience of her life. To these soldiers, Helen Keller was hope. And tonight, we honor those who have also given hope to suffering. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Dr. Bernie Jing.
Thank you very much. This is an amazing honor to be able to be here to introduce the Helen Keller laureates. This is the closest I'll ever become to being one, so this is great. Thank you for this great honor. I was told that I would have 8 minutes to introduce 5 people. For that, I am very thankful that you have a pamphlet in front of you that goes through their biography in detail, and forgive me if I have to be pretty fast about introducing each one. But it turns out there's not 5 people, there's actually 6. Helen Keller. This is why we're here. And I had to give you 60 seconds about how her story changed my story. When I was a young child, I was exceptionally good and even gifted at math. And I was exceptionally bad at reading and writing. Very, very bad. And through the course of my parents trying to help me, they dumped books and books upon me, giving me tools to try to get me to learn. And I only remember reading 3 books when I was younger. These 2 were my favorite. The Great Brain was a chapter book, and it was very difficult. I read a page a day because it was so hard. Sammy the Seal, if you haven't read it, is a very good read. It's a quick read. I used to read it 2 to 3 times a day just so that I could tell my parents that I read a book. But I had gotten to a point where I had all but given up hope to be able to read like my peers could. And then it was time to do a book report at school in 3rd grade. And I was like, I'm never going to be able to do this. Every student was assigned a different biography, and this was the one that I was assigned. It took me forever to read that book, and even longer to write the book report. but her life and her story inspired me to try. And it is her story that allowed me to be here today. So on behalf of the millions, if not billions, of individuals in this world who have been positively influenced by Helen Keller, I wanted to say thank you. Okay, so on to the main event, which is our 2023 Helen Keller Laureates. You see here, amazing group of individuals. I now have about 1 minute per person, so I'll move very quickly. Alphabetically, Gustavo Aguirre spent most of his career at the University of Pennsylvania, minus 2 little diversions, and he's currently been there since 2004 as the professor of medical genetics and ophthalmology at the University of Pennsylvania School of Veterinary Medicine. I've enjoyed meeting with you during my time at Penn. Amongst many of his accomplishments, he established the dog as an inherited retinal disease model. You can read all about his accomplishments. He performed genotype-phenotype correlation studies and successfully treated RPGE XLRP in an animal model. Many, many things he's also done. Jean Bennett spent basically her entire academic faculty career at the University of Pennsylvania, starting in 1992, just 2 years before I started there in medical school. I interviewed with her to work with her for a summer, and I made the wrong decision not to work with her. She is currently the F.M. Kirby Emeritus Professor of Ophthalmology and Director of the F.M. Kirby Center, and she also has been extremely accomplished in this area. Led several human clinical trials on gene therapy for congenital blindness, leading to the first US FDA-approved gene therapy drug for genetic disease. Amongst many, many other things, performed safety and efficacy studies on the immunologic responses of the eye to AAV, characterized the cell biology and disease pathogenesis of LCA5. Sam Jacobson. He has a distinguished career, as everybody knows, and I had the good fortune of starting in July and actually having the opportunity to speak with him on several occasions, and I really wish that I had more time with him. He was recruited to the University of Pennsylvania in 1995 by Stuart Fine and rose to the rank of the William C. Frere Professor of Ophthalmology and spent a good part of his career at Penn. Amongst his many accomplishments, he quantified photoreceptor-mediated function and retinal structure. He co-localized function and structure using OCT, and he served as PI of one of the first in-human gene therapy clinical trials for RPE65 LCA, amongst many, many things that he's done. Albert McGuire spent his entire faculty academic career also at the University of Pennsylvania, where he's currently the F.M. Kirby Professor of Ophthalmology, still very active as a retina specialist, and doesn't remember the fact that one day I was assigned to him as a medical student following him around in retina clinic. He also very accomplished, worked very closely with Jean Bennett, directed phase 1 to 3 clinical trials in the development of Leber congenital amaurosis, including directing a subretinal gene therapy training program for retinal surgeons for this very specialized procedure. Again, did many things along with Jean, but also assisted in the development of some of the novel outcome measures that are used to evaluate safety, efficacy in human retinal gene therapy clinical trials. And last but not least, Michael Redman did training in Ireland as well as here in the US and is postdoc at the NEI where he has remained since 1990. And he's currently a senior investigator and the chief of the Laboratory of Retinal Cell and Molecular Biology. Amongst his many accomplishments, he studied various aspects of the biochemistry, molecular biology, and immunopathogenicity of interphotoreceptor retinal binding protein. He identified and cloned the cDNA for RPE65 and performed extensive studies of RPE65 knockout mice. And he's continued studies on biochemistry and the mechanism of RPE65. So where does that put us all with these 5 individuals? Well, Helen Keller said that alone we accomplished little, and together we accomplished so much. Certainly they did not accomplish little. They each accomplished so much, but together, the 5 of them have allowed the science and medicine of retinal disorders to be advanced to the point where 30 years ago we would not have imagined that we would be. And so it is for that reason that the selection committee chose to have all 5 of them this year be honored as the 2023 Helen Keller Laureates. Congratulations to you all.
Thank you, Dr. Jean. At this time, I present to you the 2023 Helen Keller Laureates. Dr. Gustavo Aguirre. Dr. Jean Bennett. Dr. Samuel Jacobson. Dr. Albert McGuire. And Dr. T. Michael Redmond. At this time, I will present the medallions. Dr. Aguirre. Dr. Bennett. Accepting for Dr. Jacobson is his wife, Jean Jacobson, and his esteemed colleague, Arthur Sidiason. Dr. Albert McGuire. Thank you. And Dr. Redmond.
Thank you so much, Keller. And Benny, this is a wonderful introduction to the people who are in the stage. I'm really grateful to the Helen Keller Foundation for recognizing the work that was done 20-some years ago. It was really a critical time. For us, it really became the impetus to continue studies in our lab with individuals like William Beltran, Andras Komarmi. At a time we were at Cornell, we then moved to the University of Pennsylvania. And then with Art Sedesian and Sam Jacobson. Sadly, Sam is not here. And he was probably the moving force of this work. So I appreciate this honor on behalf of everyone in the lab, and certainly on behalf of Sam. Thank you.
I, too, would like to express my thanks to the Helen Keller Foundation, the Bright Focus Foundation, and the committee, and for all of you for coming here. It's such a pleasure to be here with people who were my mentors, my collaborators, my trainees, students, technicians, and even my would-be child, Morgan Hansen, who was the best friend of my children, who couldn't be here today. She's representing the family. So we're thrilled to have her. So when I think back about my childhood, like Benny, Helen Keller's story was absolutely life-changing for me. I must have read the same book. I wrote the same book report. And the story of Helen Keller and her teacher, Ann Sullivan, made such an impact on me. I wish I could tell my 8-year-old self that I'd actually meet her grandniece. It's amazing. They were pioneers, and it showed through their brilliance and just their incredible persistence to achieve results which have really had effects internationally and have made such a legacy. So, and I'm also really profoundly moved by the venue that we're at, where people from all over the world got together to save democracy. It's another example of how people can really work together and achieve miracles. So we're so lucky to be a place where we can take advantage of what the past scientists have done and what has happened in recent times, to take advantage of specialists who are scientists, clinicians, technicians, regulatory experts, pathologists, biochemists, molecular biologists, and to be able to move forward the work to develop treatments for blindness. It's been international, which I think is really a legacy of the Helen Keller Foundation, to be able to do these things regardless of location and place. And we thank all of you who have been involved so deeply in all these projects. And we thank particularly the patients and the dogs who led the way. They were the true pioneers. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Art Sadasian from Shea Eye Institute, University of Pennsylvania. If you're wondering why I'm here, Sam was my mentor, colleague, friend, effectively a father figure for 33 years. Sam would have been very, very appreciative of receiving the Helen Keller Award, and it's typical for him, as it has always been, he would have humbly credited his colleagues and collaborators with all the success that he achieved in his career. Specifically for this RP65 gene therapy program, 4 specific colleagues come to mind, and that's Gus Aguirre, Thomas Aleman, Alex Smoroka, and Sharon Schwartz, without whom this would have been not possible for us, and contributed immensely over some 15 years towards that program and deserve special gratitude. And among Sam's extensive collaborators during his career, 4 stand out for the work of the RP65 gene therapy program. And those are Bill Hausworth and Sanford Boy of University of Florida, Elise Heon of the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto, and Ed Stone of University of Iowa. And most importantly, he would have been thankful to the National Eye Institute for funding the RP65 human gene therapy trial that we were involved. Sam is gone, but his legacy lives on at the Center for Hereditary Retinal Degenerations. Thomas Aleman and I will continue this very important work, focusing on the careful study of the blinding conditions and their up-and-coming gene-based treatments.
Samuel was very honored to learn before he died that he had been selected as a recipient of the Helen Keller Prize for Vision Research this year. And I'm sorry that he is not here to celebrate with you. As Dr. Sadasian mentioned, there are many colleagues that he would thank, but I think he would especially thank Dr. Sadasian and the very dedicated members of the RD Center at Shea Eye Institute. But here tonight, I would like to thank probably the most important group, and those are the patients who participate in this work. They, much like Helen Keller, inspire the work. They have the courage and the hope and the support to keep it going forward. And I think for those of you who knew Sam, you know how much he cared about his patients. He was dedicated to them, and he gave them so much of himself, so much of his time and attention, but they also gave a lot to him, and they gave him the motivation to continue working in this very, very challenging field. And while it's not a great consolation. It gives me hope to know that there are so many wonderful clinician scientists that trained under him over the years that will continue to move this field forward. And I am so grateful that you invited me here tonight. I am grateful to the Helen Keller Foundation, the Bright Focus Foundation, his colleagues, and most of all to the many patients who have made this work go forward. So thank you.
So thank you. This award is important because it creates a sense of gravitas to scientific efforts. Treatments for retinal degeneration have been plagued by voodoo medicine. I probably shouldn't say that here. Voodoo medicine, pseudoscience, and fake science. Patients have and are understandably desperate, and they've been the target of innumerable scams preying on their desperation. So Gordon Gund, who many of you may know, told me a story of years ago going to the Soviet Union out of desperation, getting painful and dangerous injections of God knows what, and being humiliated by his so-called doctors. When he came back to the United States years later, he turned his humiliation into starting a foundation like this foundation, the Foundation Fighting Blindness. And what I've seen over the past decade or two is the same general trend in the public when they've seen things like this working, where they've turned away from rejecting quackery and voodoo medicine and embracing science, and I think that's extremely important. So people are going to genetic testing and not defeatism. Science has come up with a treatment for one disease. I'm sticking around for 2 more diseases. We only have about 280 left, so hopefully people will get to work on it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to the Helen Keller Foundation and the selection committee for the great honor that you've bestowed on us and myself and my co-awardees. First of all, I want to thank my first mentor in vision research, Rosalie Crouch of the Medical University of South Carolina. And I thought that the work that she was doing on rhodopsin regeneration was really cool, and that's what I wanted to do in my career. And we talked about at the time how 11-cis retinal was regenerated, and at that point nobody really knew. And it was kind of a crazy-ass delusion to try and figure out how and why and the wherefores of the reaction. But serendipity, and I love that word, serendipity played a huge role. And that and a monoclonal antibody and a great colleague, Christian Hamel, who unfortunately passed maybe 5 or 6 years ago. But Christian and I were present at the birth of RP65, and there is that brief period of time when just you and maybe your colleagues know of the existence of something that's going to turn out to be something big. And RP65 belongs to the world now, and with the help of my colleagues behind me, has become a way the gene has been transformed into a drug and medicine to cure blindness. And I would not have thought that 40 years ago when I was starting out on my postdoctoral career, my postgraduate career in science. So it's a huge honor to be able to be there and to see things before they become so well known, and it's also such a great honor to know that, and gratifying and humbling to know that what you do may help people who are suffering illness and disease. Thank you.
Another round of applause for our 2023 Helen Keller Laureates. Thank you for your work. That's for you, not me. Get down. I'll get over here. It's for you guys. And gals. Okay, we're about to close, so y'all can know we're starting. What an evening. Wow. In closing, I would like to thank someone very near and dear to my heart, and that's Laura Beckwith. Year in and year out, she puts on an incredible program. Thank you, Laura. I'm sure by now you all are starving, so please enjoy dinner, dessert, and camaraderie as we continue to celebrate this evening. Thank you.